Welcome back to Money Mindset Mentors. And we have our beautiful, talented, and super savvy Amy Kendall today. Amy, welcome back. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you.
And we are going to get right into it because we are going to talk today about a question that I hear from women. And that is, I so want to invest and I feel like I need to, but I don't know where to find the money to do it. Have you been there, ladies that are listening and watching? So today we're going to talk about where you find the magic money. Where can you go to, or what can you do differently to start investing and making that happen now and not 10, 20, 30 years later when you could have been receiving the benefits before now. So Amy, for those that weren't on last week, if you could just give us a quick introduction about yourself and your experience in this investment world, that would be so great.
Sure. I'm Amy Kendall. I started investing around 2006. We bought our first property. Intentionally, that was not an investment property to begin with. The market crashed in 2008, and we decided that we didn't want to sell our property for a loss, and so we decided that we were just going to rent that, and that turned into us having a great experience and learning a lot and understanding that that was an awesome way for us to gain tax breaks and everything. So we continued through the downturn to buy real estate and through the uptick that we've been. So we have created quite a portfolio for ourselves. And also about 5 or 6 years ago, I started a property management company. I deal mostly with investors as a real estate agent, mostly work with just investor clients. And so I'm running numbers all day and just doing, that's like what I've ended up loving because it's worked really well for us. So that's who I end up working with. So just went hand in hand. I was handing off a lot of people to property managers and they weren't having great experiences. And so ultimately started that property management company, and we manage about 300 units now between Salt Lake and Utah County, and we actually do Wasatch County as well. So yeah, that's kind of me and my experience. We have a great little team. I have five people on our team that work super good together and really care about the outcomes of the properties that we manage. So it's been awesome.
Love. And I have personally worked with her, and that's why she's on here, because I can vouch for her. The way that she puts it in layman's terms helps you to look at different properties, identify what's going to be the best thing for your situation, and then work out ways to do it that are going to be sustainable. Just so huge. So on that note, let's talk about this today. We're going to give 3 ways. Amy's going to share 3 ways that you can find that sort of investment money so that you can leverage what you have and what you already could do and maybe look at that's a little bit outside the box. So if you have questions, go ahead and post the questions, and either we will address them right now if they're right now, or if you're watching this later and you put those questions on there, feel free to put them on there. And that would help us to know what questions you have and how we can help you be able to move forward on this, whether it's now or we address it next week or in a comment in the post. So first and foremost, bottom layer, just kind of like entry level, I've got 0 money to invest. If that's where you're at, what would be a good first sort of outside the box way for finding that investment money? And again, as we're talking about options today, I invite you to keep your mind and heart open to what may be a solution that you hadn't considered before, that maybe like almost like you can get a new hairstyle and you're like, I don't know if I like it. And then like a week later, like, I love this hairstyle, right? So keep your mind and heart open for what may be a right fit for you. So Amy, what's that first level? You talked about renting in a different and unique way.
Yeah, so I find that the clients that I've dealt with over the years that are a little bit more strapped for cash, like capital does limit us all. I want everybody to first and foremost just understand that capital limits everyone. I don't care. I mean, I've worked with investors from the very low side all the way up to people who are buying 50 to 100 unit apartment complexes at a time. So first and foremost, capital always limits you, right? So whatever situation you're in, that where you're at is what your capital is limiting you where you are. And so first off, I would probably recommend people just keep that in mind. But basics, like on this other side, especially maybe like people have gone through divorce or young single moms or things like that. Everybody has to live somewhere. And so for me, one of the best strategies that I have found for those types of people is if we can get you to a spot where you are actually able to purchase a home. So you have, a decent enough credit score, and you have between 3 and 5% saved up so that you can purchase a home. FHA and VA. There are other programs too. We'll see what happens, with the next few months and the Fed and everybody. Right now, they kind of want your money tied up. They don't want that money in the market right now, right? But we'll see what happens. So right now, 3 to 5% is usually where you need to be in order to have saved that in order to purchase something. But I would say that the best solution for me and for the clients that I've worked with is going to be to buy a house or something that you have the option of subsidizing or renting out a portion of that property. So buying something that you could, because you have to pay to live anyway. So if you have allotted, okay, I'm paying $2,000 a month in rent or $2,200 a month in rent. If we can find a property that maybe the payment on it is, $3,000, but you can rent your basement for $1,000 a month, you own that asset now. Instead of paying off someone else's property, you own that asset, and you're subsidizing that asset to be to put you right where you would be to pay rent. And then now all of a sudden you're in a spot that you own that property, so you're getting all of the benefits. So there's a lot of benefits to real estate investing. One of those is depreciation. You get a depreciation schedule. You get your interest write-off for that loan. You get cash flow. And maybe when you first start into this, like this space, you might not initially think of it as cash flow because, you're not really gaining anything in excess. There was a time where you could certainly buy a house and the basement would pay for more than half of what your rental income would pay for, more than half of what that mortgage would be. Those days right now are past. I, again, will wait and see what happens with the next few months with interest rates going up and some of this uncertainty in the market. I still think that there's going to be, I think probably 4 to 6 months from now, there's going to be some really great opportunities in the market. But right now, yeah, I would say finding something that is you're going to be able to subsidize that. Or even if it's not big, like there are platforms out there that you can use for renting out garage spaces or renting out parking on your, land. You have like an extra pad and someone needs to park their RV there for the winter. So any of those kind of small asset kind of classes, even if it's not a basement apartment, something that you could use to offset that monthly mortgage payment for you is probably the easiest way for those newbie kind of investors. That might be unconventional for some people too, especially if you have kids and things like that. Sometimes it's tough to want to move them outside of your school districts or things like that. So we totally get that too. It's just like a great way to get started in real estate. Certainly it's how I got started. Actually, if I was smarter, that's how I would have started. But we started with a single family home and then moved out of it into another property that we planned on renting and just moved around like that. That's called house hacking. If you ever come across it on other platforms, people call that house hacking. So
I love that. And again, it may be like, oh man, I could never do that. But it may be that opportunity comes at some point and you go, oh, this actually might work for our situation or what it is that we're doing. So I love that there's a use that you can use. And I really appreciate that you shared, if you have some land or if you have a garage space or if you have for someone to park the RV or whatever, that is an option. And I think those are things that we wouldn't necessarily think of. I know as I drive to a practice with one of my kids, I noticed that there was this house that was sitting on a lot of land in a suburban neighborhood. And I was like, for years, I've never seen people out there using that land. It's on behind the house, and I've never seen it. And then just a couple of weeks ago, I saw that they had started building a house on that property. So anyway, utilizing what you have in ways that you may not have considered. So love that.
And two, maybe spaces, like if you have like a really beautiful space. So if you have a beautiful space, there are platforms now coming out, and we actually just did one on one of our Airbnbs that we manage. We had somebody reach out that just wanted to use it for the day for a photo shoot. And we're not even advertising that right now, right? We're just probably big enough that we have a little bit of traction and things. But if you have a beautiful space, there are platforms out there for you to just advertise a beautiful space for rent by the hour. You know what I mean? So if you move into a home with a garage and you finish that garage, you know, beautifully, and you want to use it as a studio for your photography, or you do hair or something like that, but you set it up so that it's a beautiful space, you could even, you know, potentially advertise on one of those types of platforms that's just like by the hour, somebody comes in and does photo shoots or whatever their, you know, studio type work. So there's a lot of creative ways to do stuff.
I know one of our Disciple Thought leaders, she has created this gorgeous garden in her beautiful big backyard. And we talked about that, hiring out for photo shoots for weddings and things like that, where they can do certain spaces, certain areas that are just so lovely for that. So I love those ideas. Okay, second, we were talking about house equity. So what are some of the things that people can do with house equity? And especially like right now where maybe interest rates aren't that great, but what would be a good way to use it for generally speaking?
Yeah, so that mid-level person that may have like assets tied up, you know what I mean? Like that you have a house and you have $200,000 worth of equity in that house. It is good. I've had clients that do, actually I have one right now that I'm working with, and he got a killer interest rate on a HELOC on his property. That is a 10-year term. So he's got, you know, $250,000 worth of on a line of credit with his local, you know, credit union. And he's tapped that and he's got it. And if he uses it, great. And if he doesn't use it, he's not paying interest on it. So the only thing that we have to watch out for when we're looking for properties in that scenario is that's wonderful, right? Then you have this great amount of capital that's no longer limiting you, but it is. But you also are paying an interest rate on that, right? So you're going to be paying an interest rate. So when we're going through and you need to, we just need to account for that. So it's definitely a great, it's an asset. It's something you have and you get it because you bought the property and you earned, I guess is maybe a hard way to say it, but you get that equity because you took the risk to buy that property. You took on that risk. You don't know what the market's going to do, just like people don't know now what the market's going to do, but you took on that risk to buy that property. So you own that equity, and it's lovely to just be able to use that. We just have to account for it on the other side when we're looking for property. So we just have to make sure that interest rate and the amortization schedule goes on our, what we call a pro forma, so that when we're running those numbers, we know that we're covering both our mortgage interest rate and our HELOC interest rate. So
exactly. And understanding that a HELOC that now takes second position, right? With your property. So recognizing it is a lien on your house. So making sure that you're okay with that. And yet if you pay it off, it doesn't go against you, is my understanding, that when it goes back to zero, it actually sort of helps because it shows that you have that capability. So that's some really great things to consider and look at. And the thing I loved in working with you is looking at, for those people who have a lot of equity in their home and they're like, okay, we want to pay off our house, like we want to do X, Y, and Z, and not realizing they may have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 equity that could actually be being used to put into another property that could generate, again, more equity. So it really is something that's good to talk with your lender and just look at and say, or talk with Amy and find out, hey, can I just do a consult call and just see, would this be reasonable for me to use this kind of equity? So it's not just sitting there, it's actually working for you, but in a reasonable risk way. I love that.
Yeah, certainly has to be reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can sleep at night, right? We were talking about that. So people can sleep at night. They can do enough of a reasonable risk that it still works as a benefit, and it's not, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming and I feel this weight. So you want to find that sweet spot. So I love that. For those that are like, look, I don't have a lot of money, but I have a lot of knowledge. I know how to sheetrock. I know how to drywall. I know how to lay floor. I know how to do all that stuff. I'm like a mini Joanna Gaines, but I just don't have that. there's another option. And you talked about sweat equity and partnering
Yeah.
with some different kinds of people. Tell us about how you'd work that.
Yeah, there's I've been involved in a lot of different types of structures as far as real estate's gone over the years. Done a lot of different, there's a lot of different options out there. There's, seller financing, there's partnering, and the partnering part is, yeah, you've spent all this time and energy, or like you're saying, maybe you just have some innate talents and you've been doing drywall with your dad since you were 12 years old or whatever that may be. But if you are willing to use your time and your sweat equity to put into a deal where you maybe partner with somebody that's like, okay, I own 180 doors and I no longer have the time, but I think that there's enough meat on the bone for this deal to work for two people, you can find partners that are willing to, have a meeting of the minds and say, hey, I don't have a lot of capital, but I can put this amount of time every week into improving this property. And we can lay out certain, guidelines, like we need this to be completed by this time. And maybe you do a flip project, because a flip project is something that you can generate 10 to 20. I know it looks like you can generate a lot more than that, but the margins that I've seen recently are 10 to 20,000. Sometimes if the flippers are been doing it for a long time, their margins are a lot different. But if you're just getting going, sometimes to find those properties, you're going to generate $10 to $20,000 on a flip project, in hopefully three months, 3 to 6 months. So that's something that you could take and then, roll into the next one. But also too, if just something is stable, if you can find something that's a stable property that analyzes and you think, okay, these, 6 units are tenanted right now. We think we can raise rents next year by 3% or 5%. Last year we had big rental increases across the board in Utah. So, we think we can raise rents 3 to 5%, and I'll manage, like I can manage the property I've gone through, and I know all the laws that are associated with this, and I understand, surveying and just getting people set up and having rent paid on time. And that's something that you're willing to take on. Sometimes that's a mutually beneficial arrangement for people. So, and it doesn't have to be somebody that owns 180 doors either. It could be somebody, that's like a little bit like they have a corporate job and they don't, they work 80 hours a week, but they have these assets they're trying to, use this for retirement. And those are usually pretty mutually beneficial all the way around. So
love that. And that's doable, because then you can decide how much time, what skill sets you have, and then you can go to those people and say, hey, I can take care of this piece for you, and be that property manager kind of a piece for them, especially for those that don't have the 180 doors, that are just on the smaller scale, and maybe they just have a couple of properties, but they just don't have the time. That's beautiful. Now, for those that are listening and saying, well, I don't know about any of those, I don't even know where I stand in my finances and things like that. If they're saying that, we had talked about one of the most important things you can do from today is to get your ducks in a row. Because as you had mentioned, we were talking about, well, the market is what it is now, but in maybe 4 to 6 months, it's going to be looking better. And now is a great time to sort of get your finances in a solid state. Know what's coming in, what's outgoing, know where the leaks are, and plug the leaks. And just being able to get that snapshot of where you are and where you want to go. So in doing that, is there anything that you've noticed in working with people that are kind of these, if they would have known to fill these gaps, it would have made this go so much smoother. If they would have had their tax information, if they would have had this stuff handy, ready to roll, and had some of these things cleaned up or brought down a little bit of their debt, they could have had a much better situation. Is there any kind of advice you want to give that way?
Yeah, I think a lender is probably a great place to start there. They are just such a wealth of knowledge. So even if you have, like the lenders that I work with, even they know enough about credit repair and things like that, that a lot of times if you come to them and you say, hey, look, my goals are, I want to be able to buy a property in, 10 years. 10 months. I want to be able to buy a property in 10 months. Like, what do I need to do now in order to make that happen? And then they can go through with you. You don't have to have them pull your credit or do anything like that. You can just sit down with one, or even just call them. You don't need to go in or anything. You just call, say, hey, this was my goal. and they're going to kind of go through with you, okay, what's your income, what's your monthly debt, what, you know, like what are your liabilities, what are your assets, what are your liabilities, and then they're going to give you a number. Okay, you could probably afford this, and for this is how much money you're going to have to put down. So plan on bringing, at $500,000, plan on bringing 1.75% of that as a down payment, you know, or whatever that, including your closing costs will be around at 1.75 in addition to your down payment. Your down payment is going to be 3 to 5%, like we talked about, but they're going to be able to just drill in with you on your specific, you know, situation where you're at. So if they're like, okay, you need to pay off your car, or okay, you need to remove all this credit card debt, then at least you know, and Amanda then would probably be a really great resource too, but then at least you have an understanding of what you need to do in order to make that happen. And I think we had talked about too, just watching the market is going to be very, very helpful for people. I know sometimes these things seem a little preemptive, but if you set a goal and you don't know how to get there, it's arbitrary. You're probably not going to make it. And so just taking these steps, people who know what they're doing can kind of guide you and say, you know, in order to do this, you need to do this. And then you can decide if that works for you or you think you can do it or not. But I think if you plan ahead and you're talking to the financial, you know, the lender, and you're working with maybe Amanda to try and figure out your finances, and then you're making a plan and actually watching properties, you're watching what's coming up now, and you're watching where they started on their price and how many times they've dropped and what the interest rate needs to be in order for this, you know, this property to work as a rental property. Just knowing all of that stuff, because then 10 months down the road, when you're ready to start that, you're in a totally different spot than if you had not even watched, if you'd not watched the market. So I think there's two pieces to that. Surely getting going and talking to somebody that knows, getting your life set up so that you can meet those, you know, those goals, and then actually watching so that you kind of know, well, 6 months ago or 8 months ago, these types of properties were being listed at, you know, $600,000. Now they're listed for $475, maybe. You know, I don't know where the market's going to go, but but you know, you have to, the interest rates are just, I don't think people realize how big of a difference, even just a 0.25%. So I run numbers every day, right? Like I analyze properties that come on the market every day. I run them through a pro forma. So when I'm watching interest rates, and my lenders will let me know, usually 2 times a week, I get interest rates from my lenders to kind of see, just gauge where stuff's at and make sure I know what's happening. And even just a 0.25% sometimes will make a property go negative, into a negative, you know, cash flow standpoint. And to have that is like, that's very sensitive, and we've doubled our interest rates. And so we're just in a weird spot in the market right now. Stuff still is moving. It's just moving a lot slower. And I think just by training yourself and just watching those properties on a consistent basis, even if it's just one a day that meets your criteria, I think by then, if you're 10 months out, that gives you such a landing place to say, oh, I've been watching these, so I know that over the last 6 months, you know, then you don't feel like you're the one that's catching a falling knife, right? Like nobody wants to buy when prices are plummeting, but like it gives you a sense of security. It's the same thing I felt like when we were buying properties through the downturn last time. So as we were buying properties through the downturn, and everybody's saying how terrible the market is and how awful everything is, and we're just buying, you know what I mean? We're just buying properties because we knew, okay, yeah, it's bad, but these things work. Like these numbers work. These are okay. They're safe. It's not amazing, but it's good. Now those properties are amazing. And the ones that we buy currently are not. So you have to also keep that in mind. Like the property that you buy is almost always going to be very close to market value, even if you get a deal, right? You're always going to be in a market cycle where you're at in the market cycle. So I think that understanding and watching the market is very helpful. And then just understanding that the time that you spend in the market is really where the magic of real estate comes from. So
I love that. And it's easy. You don't have to be, have been in the industry for 20 years. Like you said, go to a lender, find out what range you can do, what you need to do to get your ducks in a row, and then be watching while you're getting ducks in a row to say, okay, they said this amount and this kind of a property. So let's just go on and look for one a day, or on Friday night for our date, we're going to do, let's look up 5 properties that we think might be good, and just keep an eye on that so that you're getting, like you said, building that base. I love it. And as we said, as we're wrapping up, for that first step, that call to action for today is really getting a plan. Stepping up to that mindset. Last week is what we opened up to, that mindset of you can invest no matter where you are, no matter where you're at. You can do this. You just need to make a plan, have the desire, make a plan. So today is get with that lender, start watching the market. And then if you are ready to move on something, those 3 ways that she suggested, creative renting spaces, house equity, and sweat equity, those are great ideas to be able to check out and say, is this a fit for us? And I love in just getting prepared for this, Amanda talked last week, she was able to get rid of $32,000 worth of debt when she said, it's time, we're going to take care of this. And we have more that is waiting for us that we can experience, and we can create more abundance. So let's get rid of this. That's the, plug the leak, and let's open up to that abundance. And they were able to do that. And now they're in such a beautiful place. So we invite you to take one of those steps today, whether it's getting in the mindset, starting to create a plan, meet with a lender, look at properties, or look at one of these 3 options and see how it fits. Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been so fun.
Love it. Okay.
As always, those who are listening, if you have comments or questions, put them down below and we talk about them, and we'll come back. And each week we're here at 11 a.m. MST in this same place. And each week we'll have 2 of us that will be on. Next week it will be Rachel and Amanda. And Amanda is starting on this new investment road, this path. So we're going to do this sort of join us for this investment journey with real life person. Amanda is going to start it from A to Z. So if you're thinking about investing, tune in as you walk this path with her of the steps that she's going to be taking, and how Rachel and Amy are going to walk her through this experience to make it a successful one. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next Thursday.
Bye. Bye.